What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. So today I'm going to talk about Jarel Winston playing Exodia at Nationals. If you watch this video, you understand that he's basically been getting a lot of backlash from his deck choice at Worlds, and a lot of it is unjustified. Obviously, I'm going to talk about that a little later, but you know, I can see that it has really upset him. And I'll link a YouTuber made a video about it, and I'll link his video if I can find it, and then I'll link Jarel's video too. And some of his points were, he felt like this was Jarel's opportunity to take this serious and prove, that he's the best in the world, and he should have, done more research. He should have basically picked a deck that was more to his standards. And my argument basically has two different levels, and I have to basically address them separately. Otherwise, I'll lose track of where I am, and you guys won't get the full picture. But first off, let's talk about Worlds as a whole. Everybody seems to have this delusional mindset that Worlds is the apex of what a duelist can accomplish, and their entirety. Like if you take the totality of what a duelist has ever done from a competitive standpoint, topping Worlds is the epitome of what you can accomplish, and it flat out isn't. The reason I say that Worlds isn't the most prestigious accomplishment is because, simply put, it's not the most prestigious event. Like, I can't make it any more, I can't put it any more bluntly than that. I mean, out of all the people in the world who play the game competitively, I mean, what would you say? Maybe 0.0000000002? I mean, maybe that's about the percentage of people who are allowed to play at Worlds. So you're not really getting the best duelists. I mean, granted, some of the people who may have gotten their invitations to Worlds are some of the best duelists of the country, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, I don't really think you're getting the best duelists. Another reason that they've always had a problem with getting the best duelists is Worlds requires you to get a passport. I mean, you've seen it. I think a few years ago, Shane Scurry couldn't go to Worlds because he was having problems getting his passport. Thus, that just adds another level. I mean, you're never going to be able to get duelists all from around the world in one remote location. Even if you pay their way, there are just certain complications that make it impossible for that to happen. The second thing is, and this is where people have to understand, stop putting so much pressure on these players that we're sending to Worlds. Stop saying, we're sending you with our hopes and dreams, and you need to come back with the championship. I'm all for Go Team USA. But, if you don't win, oh, man, this makes America look bad. It makes the TCG look bad. Are you kidding me? This event is a lot more MLB All-Star Game than it is Olympics. And the reason I say that is Worlds is like, first off, you have to understand, they basically have a made-up format for 2 days that does not exist in any fashion outside of Worlds. I mean, it's basically like they're playing under their own custom rules. It's neither TCG nor OCG. So it's not something that you've been playing the entire format. It's basically something that's been thrown at you. You're basically being thrown into the deep end and saying sink or swim. I mean, Jarel Winston, these Japanese players, they have not been playing under this Worlds format or anything that is remotely like it for maybe the 4.5 months that they've been playing this format, or, maybe 5 months that they've been playing this format. When you go to Worlds and then you compare it to the meta that you've been playing, okay, well, now I can't use X amount of cards. Now decks that are associated with X cards are no longer viable. I now know that I'll have to play against this deck because, players from this meta use this, but I don't usually play against that. I mean, it just, again, it's nothing like what you're used to seeing. It's just like in the MLB All-Star Game when they play in a National League park, and then the pitchers from the American League have to go up to bat, and they're thinking, oh, what is this? Like, we don't bat. We're batting ninth, but we don't bat day to day, so you can't really expect us to get up here and hit home runs and hit dingers out the park when we never bat. You know what I mean? It's completely different rules. So this is one of the reasons why this event just isn't that prestigious in my eyes. You're getting custom rules that aren't relevant to the meta that these players are playing against. You have all sorts of reasons why a lot of these best players aren't even going to be able to attend this event. And again, you're only taking in less than 1% of the core competitive audience. So I combine all those three things, and I'm thinking, this is the epitome of what we consider an accomplishment in Yu-Gi-Oh? Are you kidding me? Like, I would consider winning North American Nationals or Euros 50 times better, 50 times more of a complete accomplishment than Worlds. Look at the gauntlet that you have to run to win U.S. Nationals. You look at some of these other countries, and I mean, they have 7-round Nationals. Are you kidding me? 7 rounds, that's it? You know, I taught 2 regionals this format that were 9 rounds each. Please. The second angle to this that I don't think a lot of people realize is, what did we already know going into Worlds? Or what did we already assume? What did we already infer based on the Japanese meta and based on what we saw at Euros? You know, me personally, I inferred that Insectors was going to be the most popular deck there. I thought that Heroes would probably be number 2 because these were decks that are wildly popular in Japan and basically on the eastern side of the world. Japan does not really like to think outside the box, especially when it comes to Worlds. They really just use what they know. And, you know, tried and true, it basically turned out that that was the case. I mean, I think 6 out of the top 8 decks there were Insectors, and there's a reason for that. Jarel playing a deck like Exodia meant, number one, he was going to have surprise factor. He was going to have a deck that no one saw coming. And when you have that surprise factor, you have that element of surprise, you're generally going to have a deck that has a very, very strong game 1 matchup. And he probably, in his wins, he probably stole a lot of game 1s in his top 8 match. You know, surprise, surprise, he won game 1. The second aspect is you're going to have a deck that, since most people didn't see coming, you're not going to have a lot of side deck hate for it. I mean, outside of Royal Decree, I mean, what are you really? What really else are you gonna have against Exodia? I mean, I personally would probably side maybe 1 copy of Mind Crush, 2 copies tops. I mean, outside of those 2 cards, you're not really going to be seeing any anti-meta hate against this deck. I mean, I'm pretty sure he went into this event thinking, if I can combat against Royal Oppression, then I'm going to, or Royal Decree, excuse me, I'm going to be in a pretty solid position. I'm putting myself in a good position to win. Now, personally, I would have played Final Countdown because, I mean, from the trap lineup and the spell lineup, the decks really aren't going to differ that much. Obviously, Final Countdown is going to have 3 Sarco, 3 Final Countdowns, but, you know, outside of that, the decks aren't really going to differ that much. They're both going to play Battle Faders / Swift Scarecrow, so even the monster lineup isn't really that different. They're pretty much the same deck in a sense. The reason is, I don't think that Final Countdown has to kind of sit around with dead cards in their hand, i.e. Exodia pieces. If I have 3 pieces of Exodia, I can't really do anything with them until I get those 4 and 5. Granted, on the opposite side of the argument, you could say, well, Capital G, once you use your first Final Countdown, you could draw, you know, additional Final Countdowns, and those are dead. But, I mean, I can live with that, because even additional copies of Sarco aren't really dead. I can get, you know, extra cards out of my deck, like 1 day a piece, so on and so forth. But overall, I think because of, I mean, you have to really look at Worlds and determine what it really means to you as a whole. Me personally, I don't really think that Worlds is that important of an event, again, because I don't feel like the best players are really going there. I feel like you're only taking, I mean, a small sample of what you would deem competitive players, and then you're not even giving them what they've been accustomed to playing, you know, like Euro versus North America would be a more indication of, you know, some of the best players in the world. But, I mean, overall, you're giving them some type of pseudo format that's kind of made up on the fly, which no one has really tested. And another thing is, I think that it's Jarel Winston's right to play whatever the fuck he flat out wants to play. And you shouldn't have any reason to, you know, bash him or have any, like, ill will or spew venom at him, because flat out, he earned that right when he topped Nationals. Did you top Nationals? No. If you top Nationals, you earned that right. Like, the only people that I could see legitimately criticizing him were his teammates, because they also earned the right to, like, they earned the right not only to play at Worlds, but I think that they kind of earned the right to basically say, okay, guys, we're all in this together. We have to give ourselves the best chance of winning. Although, again, I'll say this. It's a lot more MLB All-Star Game than it is Olympics. So I want to understand everybody else's take on this, because all this bullshit that he's getting, it's completely unjustified. You know what I mean? At the very core of the argument, I'll just leave it at this. If you guys are, you know, mad or salty, or you don't feel like Jarel played the best deck, then you go top Nationals next year and you play whatever the fuck you want. You know what I mean? And then at the end of that day, if you get venom for what you played, then you will understand how it feels. But first, you need to go top nationals first before you can even open your mouth about somebody who already achieved that feat.